So let's be honest, y'all. Relationships can feel a lot like you are just being pulled along on this raft. You are in choppy waters and it is taking everything in your power just to stay afloat. You find yourself in this current, not fully in control, simply trying to survive the ups and the downs. And then, without warning, you're just knocked off, overwhelmed by the waves of conflict and misunderstandings or the unmet needs. But somehow, after you've been thrown off, you find it in you to get back in there, to get back in the game, to get back on, hoping that this time things will stabilize even though the waters still remain uncertain. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Felicia. Today I want to touch on something that so few of us rarely take the time to unpack. And that is understanding the difference between love and attachment. And I want to go into how our past experiences and the social programming can lead us into relationships that on the surface look like love, but in actuality, we are just trying to fill a void. And I'm going to be honest, guys, this is something that I've actually had to figure out in my own life. You see, growing up, I found myself in a unique position. I was parenting myself, and then I was also parenting a parent in a way. You see, I had a parent with certain disabilities, and that kind of left me in a position at a very young age to be sort of a caretaker, a fixer, a kid that always had to be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for threats and also kind of try to plan ahead in order to not make mistakes. But on a good note, this led me to be very intuitive. I was able to learn to read my environment, which I found myself constantly doing. Now, as I navigated life, I realized that I was often trying to fill that void from my own personal childhood trauma, like so many of us do. And this void, it's not just shaped by our personal experience, it's also shaped by the systems that we live in. Systems that make us feel as though we are always lacking something, always feeling like we need more or need to be more in order to feel complete. Now, even though these systems are starting to crumble, the programming remains the same. Nothing's changed there. And so we find ourselves making these decisions based on programming that is essentially out of date. Whether it's the jobs that we take or the stuff that we choose to buy, thinking that it's going to make us happy. But most importantly, it's the relationships that we choose to get into. Now, honestly, y'all, I did not realize for a really long time just how much this childhood trauma and societal conditioning had affected my very own relationship. Like so many of us, I just thought I was following that path of love and commitment. But over time, I noticed that there was something deeper hiding beneath the surface. I just wasn't seeking love, I was also seeking safety. I was drawn to these strong, reliable characteristics of my husband. He was someone who represented structure, stability. And let's be honest, that makes sense, right? That's what I lacked as a child growing up. And honestly, along with that strength he has also comes some rigidity. Just being honest here. And subconsciously, this is actually what I attracted, because this is what I thought I needed to feel grounded. And guys, things have changed in relationships so much from the time that I walked down the aisle and said I do. Even looking back further than my own relationship to my parents, times were a lot different when they said I do. Women back then weren't even allowed to, purchase a home on their own, have bank accounts on their own. And, it's just different now. The landscape, everything is different. And as a mother, trying to advise my 2 adult children who are out there dating now on which way to go, I have really just had to challenge myself to see what's going on out there and see what changes have taken place and get into the minds and the mentality of the young dating scene out there. And I have to admit, things have gotten tricky. There is a very fine line between love and attachment. So let's talk about love. Love is this beautiful, expansive thing, right? It allows you to grow and to really be your fullest self. And then we have attachment. And attachment is usually born out of fear. Yes, fear. Fear of losing that person, fear of not being enough, fear of the unknown. And it is super, super easy to confuse the two when you are operating from a place of lack. When you are still trying to fill that void from that childhood trauma or that social pressure. Now, like I mentioned earlier, guys, we are living in a world where those systems that once defined us are starting to break down. But the programming remains. We have been conditioned to honestly believe that things like relationships, careers, and possessions will bring us happiness and fulfillment. But when those systems no longer serve us, we still keep trying to play by the same old rules because it's all we know. And this, my friends, is how we end up in those relationships that, to be quite honest, truly do not fulfill us right here, right now, in the present moment. Now, I found myself in this very position that we are speaking of right now. That safety and stability that I sought in my husband, it was all tied to that old programming still left over from my childhood. I honestly believe that if I could somehow hold on to that strength and that structure that he provided, then I would finally feel secure. But over time, I realized that this overwhelming need for stability was actually coming from a place of attachment, not love. And let me tell you, when we operate from a place of attachment, we're not free. We are not free to freely love, nor truly receive love in the manner that truly will make us happy. We are not free to be loved as our true selves. And this is where, guys, it is so crucial to start trying to understand the difference between love and attachment. If you want to continue trying to reach for and strive for a healthy relationship, whether you're in one or whether you're pursuing one, or have hopes and dreams of finding a real, honest to goodness, fulfilling relationship. Because it's love that's going to allow you to grow and to support each other, and for both of you to grow in that relationship. It's about trust and connection and this mutual respect for one another. But attachment, however, attachment is rooted in fear. And what this fear does is keeps you afraid of losing this person. It makes you afraid of being alone. It makes you feel as though you are not enough. And the sad part is, y'all, when we confuse love with attachment, we end up clinging to these relationships that just no longer serve us. Or to be honest, were never meant for us in the first place. And we end up making dependency the connection instead of real connection. You get what I'm saying? So today, guys, is my anniversary, our anniversary. We have been married for 28 years today. And just let me tell you, it has not been easy. Anyone that tells you that being married is easy, they are telling you a lie. It has been a lot of work, a lot of trying and understanding and misunderstanding, and you know, we just haven't given up, okay? And there was a lot, and I mean a lot, that we both have had to just learn the hard way. And for me, I had to confront the fact that certain parts of my relationship that I had labeled as love was actually attachment. An attachment to this idea of safety and security. And believe me, guys, it's not that he's not a wonderful, loving man or that he wasn't supportive. It's just that I realized that my need to feel in control and to feel safe was truly clouding my ability to feel true love, to feel like I was loved unconditionally. I was stuck in these old patterns from the past, and I was trying to fill this void with my husband's strong but rigid qualities, thinking that this was going to make me feel whole. Now, y'all, let me tell you, when I started trying to remedy all of these issues in myself that I had actually kind of just stumbled upon, I became a little overwhelmed because not only did I discover that I was dealing with attachment issues, but I had to research what type of attachment. So yes, there are different ways that we will attach ourselves to people. So let's talk about the idea of attachment styles. Because whether we like it or not, our early childhood plays a huge role in how we navigate the relationships that we get ourselves into as adults. Our early childhood honestly shapes the way that we relate to others. What I learned is that there are 4 attachment styles. Each and every one of these, guys, is influenced by the environment that we grew up in. So let me tell you guys how this all played out for me. Now, because of the environment that I grew up in as a child, an environment where I essentially had to parent myself and another adult, I ended up developing a mixture of avoidant and anxious attachment. You see, on one hand, I was always looking for that safety and security. But on the other hand, I completely pushed people away anytime I sensed that I was feeling vulnerable. And believe it or not, this is super common for a lot of people. Those wounds from childhood, they follow us into adulthood. And they show right on up in our relationships in ways that we don't even realize. You see, each and every one of these attachment styles influences how we relate to other people, how we handle conflict, how we give and receive love. The most important thing I want you guys to remember is that these patterns are not permanent. This is not the way that you have to live the rest of your life. Because once you become aware of your particular attachment style, then you can begin to shift. You can begin to learn and you can begin to heal. Okay, now the key to moving forward is to heal these inner wounds that created these attachment styles in the first place. It's about recognizing where our fears and our insecurities stem from. And instead of trying to fill these voids with relationships or material things, we need to fill these voids with self-love, healing, and a true understanding of our own self-worth. Now, what that looked like for me, guys, was really grasping the fact that that strength and stability that I found in my husband and I was drawn to in my husband was something that I also needed to find within myself. I had to learn to separate love from attachment and to really, really trust that love is something that grows and expands, while attachment is something that's going to hold us back. So guys, I really, really want to take this time right now and go through these 4 different attachment styles, and I want you to understand and possibly be able to see yourself in one of these if you feel as though you may actually be mistaking love for attachment. Let's break down these 4 attachment styles, which, like I said, are secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Now, each of these styles stems from the experiences that we had in our early childhood, and especially the way that we connected to our caregivers during this time. They each play a huge role in how we connect and approach relationships as adults. Okay, so let's jump into it. First, we're going to talk about secure attachments. Hats off to you. I'm so happy if you find yourself here in this category. Secure attachments, well, this is the healthiest of the styles. And this stems from having a childhood where your emotional needs were met. And this was done on a consistent basis by your caregivers. Now, if you grew up in an environment where you felt safe, valued, and loved, then you more than likely developed secure attachments. In your relationships, this shows up as trust, healthy communication, and the ability to be both independent and dependent on your partner. And you are able to build strong connection with that person. Now, people in this category tend to be very confident in their relationships. They tend to not be afraid of intimacy, and they're definitely not afraid of being alone. They're quite comfortable with themselves and their relationships. Now, let's move on to attachment number 2, which is anxious attachment. Now, with anxious attachment, what you're going to find is this stems from a situation where the caregiver was inconsistent. Sometimes, as a child, they found that the adult was sometimes emotionally available and other times they weren't. And when they weren't, they were usually distant and sometimes neglectful. Now, this unpredictability creates this need for reassurance. It creates this tremendous fear of being abandoned. Now, people with anxious attachment tend to be clingy with their partners. They tend to overthink all the small, little, minute things in the relationship. And this can sometimes make their partner feel like they can be nitpicky at times. You ever been there? All right, so let's move on to number 3. This one is avoidant attachment. Now, avoidant attachment happens when the caregivers were emotionally unavailable or dismissive during childhood. The children in this environment learn at an early age that they have to rely on themselves because the connection with the caregiver wasn't always dependable. Now, as adults, people with avoidant attachment tend to shy away from intimacy, and they also will shy away from being vulnerable. Now, what does this look like in relationships? In relationships, what you're going to see is this person tends to be overly independent. They will avoid getting close and being close. And typically, when they're going through something, they're emotional, they will withdraw. They will take themselves away from their partners. So anytime you see this person going through something that's emotionally intense, they are going to pull away. These people are going to prioritize being alone instead of a connection. And honestly, this is going to leave their partner feeling neglected. There's no other way to look at it. They're just going to feel like this person does not want to connect to me. They don't want to have real conversation about feelings. So they're going to feel neglected. And you guys, I think it's going to be super helpful for you to consider if you don't see this in yourself, perhaps you may actually hear some of this and be able to connect the dots as far as why you and your partner aren't able to connect. You may actually be able to find some of this going on within your partner. It doesn't necessarily have to solely apply to you. We all have childhood trauma somewhere down the line, not unless you were lucky and you were one of these people who have secure attachments and everything was just hunky-dory in your childhood. Like I said, if that's you, I'm super happy you got to have that experience. But for the rest of us, we are fortunate enough now that we can draw attention to where we need help and healing, and we can go for that and help ourselves and our relationships. And if you're not in a relationship right now, do the work on yourself so that you don't have to bother with this stuff in the future. All right, moving on. We are going to talk about the 4th and final attachment, and that is the disorganized attachment. Now, disorganized attachment is often the result of trauma or severe inconsistencies in a person's childhood. This, unfortunately, is where the caregiver was not only a source of comfort, but they were also a source of fear. Now, as you can imagine, this type of relationship with your caregiver can create so much confusion and inner conflict in that child that is going to follow them all the way into adulthood. Now, what you are going to find with these individuals is that they crave closeness, but they also fear it at the same time. They want a connection, but they just don't know how to receive, nor do they know how to trust it. Now, relationships for people with disorganized attachment tend to feel chaotic. They tend to be unstable. And that is because the person has not yet learned how to feel safe in close personal connections. Now, what's important, guys? It's important that we understand these types of attachments. Understanding them and recognizing them potentially in yourself or your partner is the first step toward recognizing how, yes, the stuff that happened as a child can shape our current relationships. And the good news here, guys, is that we don't have to stay like this. Over time, no matter what your attachment style is, it can evolve with some self-awareness, some healing, and some growth. So, my friends, if you find yourself at a place and you feel like your relationships are coming from a place of need, or if you find yourself clinging to the idea of what love should be, I want to encourage you right now just to take a step back. Start with healing yourself. Identify those old patterns of attachment and make room for love that's going to come from a place of wholeness rather than this place of lack. And with that, my friend, I hope this video helped. I hope it helped you to see that while your past experiences and the social programming that we've had to endure may shape how we approach love and relationships, we are not bound by them. By understanding the huge difference between love and attachment and healing our deep inner wounds, we can finally create relationships that are based on genuine connection and growth. My friend, I want to thank you so much for taking this journey with me today. If you found this video helpful, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Turn on those notifications. That way you know when your girl has posted a new video. Honestly, I would love to hear about your own experiences with love and attachment and healing. So, leave a comment, guys. My name's Felicia. Thank you so much for sticking around. See you next week.